Okay, welcome to Wednesday in Public Works. Where do you want to go first?
Yeah, Mike Moss, Public Services Director. Thank you, Commissioner. We have two executive sessions we like to have today. The first one is a purchase and sale of real estate for 10 minutes, and then contract negotiations for 10 minutes.
Okay, so we'll go back to executive session, person sale for 10 minutes, contract negotiations for 10 minutes.
board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 1:56 p.m.
Excuse me, back from executive session, no decisions rendered. I'll turn it back over.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Savannah Clement, Public Works. So today we have a couple items, and the first one I'm going to go over is the water meter RFP award. So I have some information to hand out before we start with a little historical context. I guess it's a page of historical context, so sorry, but I'll go ahead and pass these out. I can hand it out. You can
Oh,
talk.
perfect. Give me one more.
Never mind, I got it.
You sure?
Yeah. Okay, so the notes that you're receiving, I essentially created them for the new board members who may or may not be aware that we received approval from the prior board of ARPA funds to replace our county water meters. We did get approval up to $550,000, again, through ARPA direct qualification funds to solve some, what we would consider significant problems with our water meter system. And what we did was go out to we went and sought proposals through the RFP process back in October. We scored those, and we actually conducted interviews with the top 2 scoring vendors, and we have made our selection. And we're pretty excited about it. I did include what some of our expected outcomes are from this award, and it is our hope to just to be clear, discontinue our third-party reading agency, which would only be, I don't say only, but it's relatively low considering the price. However, it would save $18,000 annually, and it would also reduce a lot of the errors that we're seeing to our customers. And if you've recently read the City of Longview changes, they're actually doing that's their fix to the same problem. Same agency that we have been using. Unfortunately, for utilities in our area, you really only have one option. And a lot of us are seeking to not continue with that option. So improved meters will enable us to remove that third-party reading agency, essentially get rid of manual reads. It'll allow our customers to have more real-time accurate consumption numbers. We'll be able to know quickly when we have consumption issues such as leaks, breaks, et cetera. It will also allow customers to have a customer portal, which they don't currently have with our system. And so we're pretty excited about it. In scoring the 2 top vendors, they were about a 20-point difference between the 2. But what really made the difference for me in my scoring was the ability to use some of our current meters that have been replaced in the last 5 years. And we were able to, and Travis, who is one of our water sewer technicians, who's really led this project and moved it forward, he helped us a lot on kind of understanding the complexities of meters. But anyways, with the other person that we had interviewed, we would actually have to replace all of our meters to be able to use the remote reading function. With the vendor we selected, we'll actually be able to use our current meters and just apply, and I'm dumbing this down, but essentially just apply the remote reading capability to them. So we don't have to purchase new meters if we don't need to, and we only need to kind of incorporate the AMR, so that automated meter reading radio head, essentially. So that was really what helped me make that decision, and I think helped with the other scoring as well. So it was a lot of information for a simple award, but keep in mind that the award is not going to be for the full proposal amount, because we will not have to replace all of the meters that we requested. So this will come up on Tuesday, just the award, and then the board will also see that contract with the actual pricing, unit pricing. So
I think I was looking at that and it's 400 and some.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, it was, oh, my note went away. There it is, 425,000. Now, it's going to be lower than that because we asked the responders to include meter pricing for all 1,300 meters.
Right.
We won't have to do that.
Yeah,
So
gotcha. The other question I had on that, I know when Longview did that, it went from they weren't reading the meters religiously. They were throwing estimates. So then people got hit with, when they actually got read, they got hit with some strange, outrageous type bills.
Yes.
Do we expect any of that?
We did.
How do we deal with it?
We did to a lesser degree. And so what we did when we were first made aware of it, as I believe we did adjustments, and we did not
So we-
charge those customers because of our third-party issue.
Not doing the job.
Correct.
Okay.
Savannah, how many meters are we actually going to replace though?
Travis, do you know the approximate amount of meters that we'll need to purchase? 1,000? He's gonna come up. We brought a little demonstration.
Oh,
answer. There we go. These are the meters, roughly kind of what we got in our idea of purchasing. These are the ones that we have in the ground. This top will fit on this base and it will allow us to exchange just this piece to make it all one harmonious system. So how many of these do we have in the ground? We're not exactly 100% sure, but out of the 1,300, I would say we're safe to say probably 100 or so. We already have about 100 or so of these, so I would say 1,000 would be kind of one piece, couple hundred, just the tops.
Okay. Any other questions about the meters? He brought those so that we could show. I was excited.
Yeah.
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks, Travis.
Can I add a
Thank you.
couple 2 cents?
Yes,
So, in addition, the crew is going to be replacing these so that we know the exact location. And so some of the extra funds that were put towards it will be used to replace some of the meter boxes that are damaged or out of date and make sure all of the connectors meet our current standard so that moving forward, all of our meters will have the right meter set, is what they call it, for them to replace them quickly in the future. So we are going to use some of the additional dollars from that to complete the project, but we are doing the work in-house.
Yeah. If I remember right, I know we won't have the manual reading now, so that's about 18,000. We don't know, we know we have some water loss. We don't know exactly what it is, but we expect some savings on that. And over the time frame that these meters last, I don't know that we'll collect everything back, but we'll get a good chunk back.
That's a good point. What is the life expectancy on those?
Great question. So we're looking at, and I have it on here, a 10-year battery warranty and a 20-year meter warranty. So those are the warranties over it, but they can last obviously longer than that. It's just that's what they'll guarantee them for. So. All right.
Okay?
So the award will come on Tuesday. And again, I expect, we'll have other questions when the contract's presented.
Okay, so our next item, if you had no more questions about that, is our NPDES permit. So I don't know if you want a little history or if you just want me to jump straight into the ask.
I would like some history and an explanation of the MPEDS.
You got it.
acronym.
I figured the newer members wouldn't know what I was talking about. So NPDES is the acronym for the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. This is a portion of the Clean Water Act. This portion went in the early 90s. It's delegated to the states for implementation. The purpose is to keep our waters clean by controlling stormwater runoff. So in the early 90s, which was when I started my career in civil engineering, they had what they called phase one municipalities. So those are your DC, New York City areas, really large metropolitan area, and they had to start establishing stormwater programs. So treatment when you were building new impervious surfaces, that system, and thank goodness we don't have to do this anymore. Back in the 90s, I chased storms, so you could collect samples of your first flush to see if the first 30 minutes of runoff, were there more pollutants in it than towards the end of the storm. I was on the East Coast, so storms are very different out there than they are here. And it's a whole series of stuff that you need to do. Later, about 2000, early 2000s, phase two communities were established, and they're with populations over 50,000. So Longview, Kelso, urbanized part of Cowlitz County, and Rainier just are considered a metropolitan area, an urban area. So we were required to join the permit system. So in Washington State, you are either a phase one permittee, you get a Western Washington phase two permit, or an Eastern Washington phase two permit. And when we initially were told we were becoming a community, the board decided that we would not implement the program countywide. We only implement it in the urban area. So just the area around Longview, Kelso, and including Lexington. So that is a boundary established by ecology, and it is mapped. And we have lots of requirements that we are required to do. This is the current permit that Sarah and I work on implementing every year. So we have items that we have to do, like mapping, go out and inspect our discharges, public education and outreach. If you walk around our office, we have lots of little squishies that are clean water. We do an annual calendar contest with the middle school students. Our public outreach we do in concert with Longview and Kelso. We have a group called Cowlitz Clean Waters that is established on an interlocal, so we share the cost for the outreach, and we have a standard message across the area. Other items that we have to do, we are required to clean 25% of our catch basins every year. This is a newly issued permit, was issued this August. One of the things we're developing is a urban street sweeping program that we're going to have to do in accordance with their guidance and report every year. We have to do annual reporting. That is what we're working on right now. And we have to, when there's a spill reported, we have to go out and investigate and determine where it came from, and we have regulations on cleaning up. It applies to development. As I said, when you do new developments, you have stormwater requirements, which are based out of public works. We also have to train our staff on how to handle those things, and we have, I'll throw another acronym out there for you. We have a SWIP for every one of our public works facilities, which is a stormwater pollution prevention plan to prevent what is proper storage of our salt and our sand. And if we have a spill, we have spill kits on site to pick them up. So that is the general requirements of this permit. We do have an urban stormwater fee. You'll hear people complaining about their stormwater fees. And if they are not a county resident. The county charges $39 per parcel per year. It is way more expensive in the city limits of Longview and Kelso. So what I'm here to ask today is, because we have permitting requirements and because they're not here yet, ecology has decided in their infinite wisdom that the responsible official is not automatically the chairman, and the person that the board delegated when it was Arn, Dennis, and Rick has to be redelegated to sign everything every time there's a new board. My ask today is, Is that how you'd like me to move forward? Have the chairman of the board be our responsible official, so all the official notices go there, and then you guys can delegate signing authority for our regular submittals to Mike so that you guys are aware of them but not responsible for them. If that's the case, I'll move forward with that paperwork through Kelly.
How has that process been working so far?
It works very well. I mean, we do our annual reports. So when our annual report's done, Sarah's generally done with it by mid-February. We post it online because you need to have it out for public comment. And then we will submit it before the deadline, the end of March. It's been a smooth process with us doing the submittals and passing the rules through you guys. And when we have to update our ordinances, you'll hear about it again. I am perfectly happy every year to come and present at the workshop our annual report instead of just blasting it out there on our social media. I can come present a sum up of what we've done in the previous year in February or March. Probably February when the report's done, so if there's changes and questions, we can incorporate them.
So under current practice, what would the board be involved in, and when would it pass to the signer? So Mike.
Generally, the board is not involved in anything except when we're changing ordinances. We just go about our merry business and we go to outreach events. We do our sweeping, our inspections. We keep our maps up to date. And unless there's an ordinance change that ecology is requiring as part of the permit, the board only sees the budget.
How do you feel that's been working?
I think it's been fine. I haven't noticed any issues with it.
No impositions on your part or anything?
No. The fact that they call me responsible, I'm not sure, but
It sounds good to me.
yeah.
Thank you. I'll move forward with the paperwork and you'll see it on Tuesday.
Okay. So the last item we have to discuss today, I think actually this is the last agenda item. I don't know if Mike had other miscellaneous, but is the capital and tenant improvement policy revision. When Public Services was established a couple of years ago, and about a year and a half, 2 years now, we then became in charge of the capital improvement requests. I also created this kind of a summary for the board just to establish some historical context again, identify why we sought to update the policy, and then what we project to be the expected outcomes. So the policy itself was established and it has been per resolution for years, and it essentially outlines what the county's capital improvement plan is and how we prioritize projects. And the board's likely aware, we have our 5-year facilities capital plan, which is done through the budget, which the board has seen several times. This offers an opportunity for individual departments and divisions to kind of request their own improvements. And so the way that's been done in the past has been very unclear. There's several different forms floating around there. I think last year when we did it, I think we got 3 different forms, like just people honestly just submitting on a different form because that's all they could find. People weren't aware of when they were due. The ranking was difficult. So that was what we sought to do. Let's streamline it. Let's make it more clear. Let's actually identify what we're doing, not what the previous policy said we should be doing, which was not a sustainable way to manage capital assets by having a committee do that. That did not work out. I did, with quite a few others, work on this. The capital improvement team developed the policy. I just facilitated. So this is the outcome of that work over the past year. No decisions need to be made today. Just wanted to give you an opportunity to review. I'll probably bring it back next week, and we can have more conversation on it and address any questions or concerns.
How much do we set aside each year for these?
That's a great question. 250,000.
Yeah.
what we were seeing was often playing out. Like, so years ago, I want to say, I don't know, 10 plus years ago, you could ask for a new roof. So, Commissioner Dahl or Rader could request a new roof for admin. It wasn't really a realistic way to make sure you're on a replacement schedule, just have random submissions. So what it ended up turning out to be was more of maybe Kelly saying, can we get new carpet in the commissioner's hearing room? Can we remove the wallpaper? That is what we see a lot of. And that's what it became. It wasn't like a capital improvement request for a new building. It was just like the minor improvements to their spaces. And so that's what we try to, we're offering the capital side of it. So if there's some major capital improvement we've been missing, yes, you could still do that. But we try to make it makes more sense and just be common sense and letting people request these by department.
It gives the departments the ability to identify things that hinder their work or they feel that something should be better in their place, and gives them an outlet to tap some money, although we do limit it, yeah.
That's correct, yeah. I think on average, our average request this last year was, I think, between 20 and 25,000. So we were able to actually present all of the projects that were submitted to the board and get them approved because it was still under budget.
Do we exhaust that fund ever?
We've only been really managing it for the last 2 years. I don't know if you have any historical context, Sean? In times of budgetary limitations, it's not always an option, right? So I'm sure there's been that.
Yeah, so the Sean Rowe, Public Works, the 310 fund, which this comes out of, is funded both by REIT dollars from real estate transactions and then general fund transfer ins. So in times of economic strain, these can be removed at that point in time. Prior years, we've seen any values between $0 and about $150,000.
Okay, so board will have some time to review, and again, I'll be back next week if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Any miscellaneous items? Okay.
Thank you again, Commissioners. Mike Moss, Public Services. Talking about capital improvement projects, or in our 5-year plan, of course, the north lot, we would talk about quite a bit, is on the calendar for 2025 this summer. We had an arborist come through, I believe, yesterday to look at the trees in the middle of the parking lot here to see the health of those, plus what would happen when we grind that parking lot, because in many places, we're going to grind between 2 to 6 inches down before we repave that lot. I expect their report back tomorrow or Monday, but there's a chance they may say we need to remove those trees in the north lot, which means we need to find maybe a better place to have trees or shrubbery in that area. If we're taking some out, a lot of times we'll try to find a new home for greenery. So sometimes taking out trees is a challenge for us with the citizens also, because the people don't like us removing trees, and we don't either. That's why we rely on a professional to tell us how they'll survive when we redo that north lot. So just want to give you a heads up that will be coming out fairly soon.
Are they worried about the root system?
They are. A lot of them are pushing up already, and they figure once we grind down that far, we're going to go right through the root system.
Pushing up through the asphalt.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's all from Public Services, unless the board has any questions for us. Or public comment.
Oh, I do have one quick question. Jennifer from Noxious Weeds, I was talking to her. Do we know, do we have a timeline as far as when they're going to be fully taken care of or moved into their section?
I just ran into Jason. He was just coming from Noxious Weeds on my way up here. What we're trying to do is, and it's actually addressed in the CIP policy revisions, space allocation. So we had 2 different departments utilizing the space that we had to put them in, and one of those departments were working on getting a lot of old records out of the one remaining space. So long story short, I hope that it's going to be very, very soon, maybe in the next couple of weeks, that we'll be able to get them fully in that space and able to use that one office, as well as the storage of their items that they use a lot out in the field, which are currently still over an annex. So hopefully sooner than later.
Thank you.
Is our schedule still good over here? It hadn't changed any? We're still on?
From what I've seen on email chains between Risk and the contractor, it's still on schedule,
Yeah.
which is still, I'm quite a few weeks out. I believe remediation is now complete and they're starting construction.
Perfect.
Yeah, the last email was, they're collecting all of kind of their bids and they'll be presenting a cost package to us. They said this week, for us to present and provide feedback. So, and this is for the reconstruction portion.
Right.
And we're not moving the whole office in, right? We're gonna move in different sections, support staff first and then,
Correct.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah. And just a thanks to Travis. I know he worked on these meters pretty hard, so we appreciate that. Thank you for your work on that. Okay, anything else? We got about 5 minutes. We'll just want to recess till 2:30? Okay. It is, but I'm going to work with a couple of years. You kind of get used to it. So on the last day, I always hate this format, and I see it always on TV. Yeah, really hope so. They'll give you you'll have the table. Right. Okay. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending. We have special guests with us today. Last year, we got reached out and wanted to start meeting with ecology on a more regular basis again. So we have a series of 4 different meetings with them this year, which we appreciate. And so we'll just get started. I'll turn over and let them introduce themselves so I don't butcher any names, and then we'll just get into conversation. Have them update us.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Dahl. It's great to be here. It's great to see folks. Thanks for coming. And yeah, I'm just glad we got invited back. I was a little worried there for a little bit. We hadn't heard back, but there's a lot going on. But we're really excited to come, and thank you for the invitation, and thanks for setting this up for the quarterly basis, I think now, which I think is a really good opportunity for us to answer questions, find connections within our own agency too. So if we don't have the answers now, we can go back and look through the tentacles within our own agency and find the right people to kind of help either answer questions or find resources and make connections. So I'm Bob Aktalabi. I am the Southwest Region Director. Time has kind of flown by here. I'm almost up at a year now in this role, though I've been in ecology for 13 years, a lot of which was working on coastal management, floodplain management, and shoreline management issues, all the way up until I got this position. So yeah, Shauna.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Again, yeah, thanks for having us here. It's great to be able to just talk through whatever issues, answer questions. I'm Shauna Hanisch-Kirkbride. I'm also with Washington Department of Ecology. I'm the manager of the Vancouver field office. So we have a little satellite office in Vancouver with staff of about 13 right now, with different programs, spills response, water quality, our C program, shorelands and environmental assistance. And so I've been with ecology for a little over a year. I've worked extensively with the Spirit Lake Toutle Cowlitz Rivers Collaborative. So know Cowlitz County pretty well, I feel like, in terms of the watershed and all that. Really have enjoyed being involved with the collaborative. There's some good stuff going on there. Before I was with ecology, I was the managing director of Lower Columbia Fish Enhancement Group, with which some people may know. They do a lot of really great salmon habitat restoration projects. So happy to be here.
Projects in Cowlitz County that you're kind of involved with. You mentioned Spirit Lake and kind of, I don't, how to explain how ecology stays involved with this, what your responsibilities, what you can do type things.
Yeah, so one of the formal part of that is that Department of Ecology is a signatory to the cooperation. I think it's called it's some kind of formal agreement between agencies, letter of cooperation, I think. And that really stems from our role there really has to do with water quality to some extent, floodplain management. We also do shoreline protect and manage shorelines as well. We work with local governments on shoreline management. So that's kind of our role there, is in the water, really the water section of that. And then of course you have, WDFW really involved as well in the habitat, fish and wildlife side also, but that's ecology's niche. My particular role, it's just kind of carried over from when I was with the Fish Enhancement Group. We have a work group that we just started recently. It's kind of a second iteration of it. I see Bill Fashing over there. He's involved with it as well. The Council of Governments has been played a leadership role. And essentially we're working with, we have a smaller group. So it's a work group within the collaborative. There's about, I think, 10 of us total. We've got a couple folks from the county, building and planning, like Adam Trimble, DNR, the Cowlitz tribe, couple folks from the Council of Governments. I'm forgetting a couple, but essentially, the Fish Recovery Board as well. So we're working together to come up with some priorities and really try to develop projects, like on the ground projects that we can push forward, basically present to, decision makers as well as potential sponsors. To say, here's some things that we think collectively would be great projects to do for flood control, salmon recovery, but also, lamprey, Eulicon, smelt as well. And essentially move those forward, because the collaborative it's built relationships, it's done some really good things, but the work group is intended to really be where the action is at. So trying to come up with a list that would be helpful.
Yeah, just kind of add on to that and say that, my background comes from addressing natural hazards, in particular in the coastal environment. And I think when I started to learn a little bit more, stepping into this role about the collaborative, and then Commissioner Dahl, we were out on site, and that was my first interaction, kind of looking at the landscape, understanding some of the erosion concerns with the river, looking at the sediment deposits that are there, and just trying to think creatively, in addition to our role in the spaces that kind of Shauna outlined, just a role in providing good public service. And I think that's number one to me as a priority, is that all communities get this equal attention and support from our agency and the regulatory and in particular non-regulatory space too. And we've played a role in helping connect, so bringing Commissioner Dahl down to use our ability to try and leverage some resources out of the Corps. Our floodplain management program has a strong ties to FEMA. So finding opportunities to just bring resources to really tough issues. And I think this is one of them, looking at a system, trying to understand the system, and then figure out how modifications or our influences can help address some of the both hazard concerns as well as the natural concerns, and trying to find those nice spaces where there's multi-benefits in that.
Yeah.
So
I think one of the areas people don't probably understand, and I didn't until we got involved with it, you also have to work with the Corps, because Corps really has overriding authority over most things, and that's kind of a difficult space for all of us, because it's pretty well laid out what Congress asked them to do, and trying to move around in that can be a little bit difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I think that's something we've experienced in a lot of different areas, riverine areas, marine areas. I think there's strong parameters around that, because the Corps, there's a lot of work to do. But I think that's where we can play our role to try and help prioritize some of the things that we're seeing on the landscape with our partners in local jurisdictions, and again, trying to find opportunities to play a role that we can to help make those connections and try at least. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We had, when I had the opportunity to visit with you down in Vancouver, I know you had the Corps had some programs that would help with some of the issues, and I think you guys, I'm pretty sure you guys did too, different type of things that counties could look at. Maybe if it's okay, kind of briefly go over those type of opportunities that we can access.
Sure. I think we can probably speak to the ones that we are familiar with within our own agency and or associated. Because I think the Corps I've worked with the Corps now for a very long time, and I learn about something new every time I talk to them.
Yeah.
So the authorities and knowing the nuances there. And so again, unfortunately, they couldn't be here to join us today, but we're hoping that they can come to the next one and share their resources. But I think there are, in my mind, it seems like there are some opportunities for grant programs, both in our floodplain management space as well as our habitat restoration space. But it kind of does come down to the overarching understanding of the system, right? You don't want to get into a project and not understand how those dynamics are playing out, because one thing that happens upriver can affect downriver, and where that river moves, how it moves, all those different kind of dynamics. And so, Shauna, maybe you can kind of cover some of the planning grants, but The ones that I'm familiar with are definitely around understanding our floodplain, systems, doing some planning around that to understand, again, kind of how to influence which parts of the system to get the kinds of outcomes that everybody wants. So I think it comes down to the comprehensive flood hazard management plan is one of those documents that can help kind of put all that information into one place and start to get into those conversations around what kinds of projects then, once you look at that kind of broader scale information, what kind of projects would then be implemented that could support the kinds of outcomes that we're all looking for. So that's one tool that I know opens up the door to grant programs from our agency. In certain circumstances, I think there could be FEMA funds too that could be really helpful. Cooperating technical partnerships is a bucket of funding that we've accessed before to support communities on projects like we're experiencing on the Tootle, I guess some of the erosion kinds of projects, and they can be from information gathering, technical analysis, all the way down to like project design. So they're really kind of flexible funds, which is really helpful. There are some challenges with some of those buckets of money though, as we start to access them. And one is just the amount of time needed to apply. Federal funding opportunities they're extensive. But we've got a whole team that's there and familiar with those grants that can help with that process too. We've gotten creative with even how to administer those grants so that some of the burden is kind of taken off the organization or the local government that's been working on them. So an example of that, I think there's a cooperating technical partnership right now with Ocean Shores to understand some of the erosion issues that are going around in White Hut Bay in the estuary there. We've used it with Pacific County to do a planning scale analysis of erosion and erosion strategy. So it could kind of look a lot of different ways, but I think those opportunities kind of emerge once that kind of foundation information is collected into one spot. So starting with information gathering and getting all the way down then and just working your way through. And I found that the most success comes from an identification of the problem first, and that kind of then opens up once folks can start to find common ground on that, understand the issues, and the communities can kind of define how to address those problems. That starts to then, I feel like the money is there once you can get to that level and everybody has consensus around what those projects might look like. I think that's really what is effective in that space. But again, there's funding all the way through the process, from information gathering to project design, and then implementation. It's just trying to shake the right trees.
Yeah. And I think part of the struggle we have, not just as the county, but with that whole system there, is it's getting everybody in agreement on what's happening with it. Because and this is probably not the best way to describe it, but there's still so much ash coming down there that it moves the river to different spots. And it's, the way I think about it, it'll kind of come down in clumps. It's like a rat going through a snake type thing. And until it gets out to the Columbia where it's a commercial freeway, you can't really do anything with it. You just try to mitigate what it does as it's working its way down. And I think that makes it difficult for all of us to deal with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think that's why you have to look at it system scale, and that makes it more challenging though. I mean, when you're looking at a finite piece of shoreline, and let's just say the site we were looking at that was experiencing erosion at the county road, you can look at that and try to put in a solution that you think would make sense. But if the system is going to be changing, the thing that you just spent money on may not be effective. And so you don't want to waste the your funding on things that aren't going to be effective. And so that's why you have to look at a larger scale first, and yet it it makes it very complicated. But if you can do that, then I think it benefits all those investments down the road.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I try to convey that, and people, they just see the river and they work around the river, but to me, it's a bigger issue than I think is realized, just because of what I've learned that you're all dealing with. I mean, incredible amount of ash still coming down that thing. Who would have guessed? What kind of relationship? Because I know I have folks here from the Silver Lake area. The Silver Lake, I get questions on what can we get helpful with in Silver Lake, and I don't know what kind of responsibilities ecology has or what kind of things they offer for Silver Lake itself.
Yeah, I remember this coming up at the meeting in May, and I looked into it. Ecology did a water quality assessment for Silver Lake. It wasn't that long ago. I think it was about 2018. And we have a lot of water quality grants that could be applied in Silver Lake. My understanding is it's, I think, becoming more shallow and nutrient rich is the problem there, which is a little similar to Vancouver Lake.
Yeah.
But Silver Lake probably would be a little easier to manage because there's fewer, players involved. I think, isn't it mostly like private residents? But we could provide some information on options for Silver Lake, and but I think we have an understanding of what's going on there. It's just coming up with an action plan, and
Maybe you could send some of those options available through here and I can get it out. Because I know there's a committee that looks over that whole lake, and they get questions, and you have grants, and how do we go about doing that and getting some of that quality done, and what can we actually do in the lake?
Did I miss anything on the collaborative?
well, I was gonna add, as Commissioner Dahl was talking about the sediment that keeps coming down, ash, mess. One of the challenges there is not just what continues to come from the mountain and the debris avalanche, but the fact that there's so much that's in the floodplain because of the emergency actions that were taken, understandably, right? But there would be, one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is, perhaps looking into like a geotechnical study, finding some funding for that would develop a dredge material management plan. So essentially like some people call it spoils, but there are people, including the Corps, who are getting away from the term spoils because they're finding beneficial use for dredge material, right? There's companies that can extract it, sell it, put it to use. There's also value in keeping some of it in the river to, provide benefits down at like the mouth of the Columbia, that kind of thing. That's really more the sand in the Columbia, though. The ash, Mount St. Helens ash sediment is pretty fine from what I understand, but it still has commercial use. So they're putting together some kind of like a dredge material management that really looked like probably downstream from the sediment retention structure, could provide a lot of options and also open some funding opportunities, whether with FEMA or whoever. But I think people do forget that there's so much just piled up still, that if we could do something with that, it would help a lot, because eventually most of that is going to end up in the water.
Yeah, it's going to come down. And we do, as a county, we do sell some of those spoils, but it's something they have to mix with. I mean, it in and of itself, it's not a good base. We saw that in Rock Creek when after 40 years, all of a sudden the flood event, it all comes washing out, right? Yeah. But yeah, I think it does have commercial. I was at a conference and Florida was worried or talking about erosion, and I said, I got sand for you. I got sand for you.
It's actually kind of funny because I've been in several situations where there's a comment like that made and somebody's like, I had no idea. And we provided some erosion assistance to Guam, actually, and we went, myself and our coastal engineer went to Guam to kind of look because they were curious about some of the efforts that we've done here on the coast. And believe it or not, that's what happened, even to each other. We went to visit one area and they were saying, we just have so much cobble. We don't know what to do with it. We're taking it out of the river every year. And we're like, why don't you use that cobble on the other side of the island where you're having erosion issues? And there's this new engineering structure idea that could work really well. And they not only are the ones doing the dredging, but they're also the ones doing the projects on the erosion side of the island. And they just needed that connecting piece. I mean, so now they're starting to implement it and it's free to them because they manage all of it. And it seems like a great project now that they have. So, you know, like simple things like that come up just through conversation. If you have all the right people in the room. And so that's another thing too is, I'd say is, you know, through our floodplain management network, there's a lot of resources that we can tap through organizations too. So even if it's not money that we currently distribute through our own grant programs, there are several flood partners as part of our Floodplains by Design network. I know American Rivers is really active too, and they can play a really good role in finding resources maybe where we may not know of them within kind of an institutional knowledge. And, you know, they have a lot of connections that they can make too. So I think it comes down to, you know, Commissioner Dahl, what you have expressed is that you want the you know, the county to lead here because the issues are getting so important and imminent. And I think that's exactly where it starts. You know, the state can play a role, but we've talked about this. It's really the local lead.
And I think we're
is most
willing
effective.
to do that.
Yeah.
The information Sean has given on this, it sounds a little encouraging to me because I know erosion is one of our big things. You've seen it
Yep.
out on our Tootle Parkway and Castle Rock's experience on their fairgrounds, and you're just seeing it different places. I went down Mount Pleasant and they did some erosion control in a place there. I can see the pilings and different things. So the fact that we could do some of that would help. I think and I'm just speaking, we haven't had much of an issue with the flood. I think the dikes and stuff have been pretty good with that. It's kind of converted to erosion in certain spots that is starting to cause us some issues. And so I'm kind of encouraged to hear that they have some of that.
And I would just add, I really do think the private sector plays a role in that because we're talking about a lot of money to move that stuff. And I think where you would get a lot of that incentive is from people that can benefit commercially. Granted, there's permitting, there's it's not just there's a process that has to be gone through. But I mean, we've had folks reach out to us, the work group, Amy at Port of Longview, Council of Governments, folks from like Pacific Fiber saying, we've got land here, we can take dredge material, so they see benefit, whether it's for fill or something that they can turn around and put to use. So I do think that needs to play a role. Not sure what that would look like, but kind of thinking outside the box, that could really help.
Would that be would Army Corps have to be on board with that?
They would play, what's 404?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, most likely, yeah.
Yeah, there's probably a process there.
I'll probably be heading back Washington DC. It looks like in May, and one of the stops was obviously going to be with Army Corps. If there's any information I could take back and kind of share with that, I'd be more than happy to do so.
Okay. I can say that under their beneficial use policy for dredge material, and they have that, what's their goal to?
70%.
Yes, 70% of dredge material nationwide is supposed to be used in the beneficial use sense by like 2030 or something.
Yeah.
And that can be habitat restoration, but commercial use is one of those beneficial uses. So that falls under that umbrella. So we can provide some information on that.
Yep. Yeah, and we'll certainly, knowing that too, I think we'll continue to do our best to try and get to meet another meeting with Valerie before that happens, because I think the Corps is the one that knows the Corps the best. And That's
Yeah.
always really helpful to have the district's perspective and identifying the right kinds of programs that you can kind of champion or talk about with the core in DC too and headquarters.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Couple more things from me, and I know we have people here who may want to have some questions if you're okay with that.
Sure.
I see our new governor put out a couple executive orders. One was on trying to move building stuff along quicker, and one was on time limits on permits and stuff. Do you see any kind of effect on that to you, or what do you foresee on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, any executive order we have to implement under the governor. We're executive cabinet. We are a highly regulatory and permitting heavy agency, though we have a lot of other non-regulatory programs. So we anticipate that we're going to be looking hard at our systems to try and make improvements to accomplish that mission. So, I think we're starting to just digest a lot of the work through the transition right now. We have a new director as well, Casey Sixkiller, who he was the Region 10 administrator at EPA.
Okay.
So he knows our portfolio well, but he's also getting his feet underneath him, in particular around the state legislative session right now. But yeah, I mean, I think we're taking a hard look to make sure that we're accomplishing the new governor's goals and executive orders. So that directly applies to us. Mm-hmm.
Last thing I'll ask you, and then I'll turn it over for questions from the audience. And I don't know if you have any deal in this. We had a project, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't like Olympia Ecology's answer to it, was converting some methane gas from our landfill. I think you're probably familiar with what PUD wanted to do. And I don't know, I think the PUD maybe, I can't speak for them, but they may be trying to go through, I don't know if there's an appeal process or something, but if there's any things you think I can do as a commissioner, I would probably like to fight for that.
Yeah, that's good to know. I think the last communication we had, my understanding of it was that the PUD didn't want to continue pursuing it. So if there is interest.
Cost it took it out of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And I would say that was right when I was getting my feet underneath me.
Yeah.
I was starting to learn about those issues. I think we can continue. We're definitely interested in continuing exploring that. I think we had anticipated hearing back from the PUD and engaging in conversations. And unfortunately, I think that was miscommunicated. And so I think we are definitely interested. We want to see good projects. And I think my understanding of what the issue was, I think we can explore that in different ways potentially. So I think the conversation is definitely worth having again.
Oh,
So
good. Well, I'm pleased to hear that, because
yeah,
we're interested in that project too. It's not something we expect to make anything out of, but it just seems to make sense to utilize that gas and provide energy to these homes instead of just burning it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd definitely say that we're continuing to be open to that conversation and would invite it for sure. I can't promise anything, but
Yeah. Understood.
But certainly a priority for me. So yeah.
I'm going to tell this story on myself, and I got to tell you, it's not reflected at our local people, but I made Commissioner Weber nervous over there, because they were going on this story and about ecology in Olympia. It said, no, you got to put these filters or whatever you got to put in there that added the cost deal. And I called him nitwits, and he got nervous. I said, I'm not talking about the local guys. I'm talking about the guys upstairs. So
I'll put myself in the local category there, but I do sit, and I make the distinction. I sit in the Lacey building, because I'm the Southwest Region Director. But I don't take offense to that. I see it as improvements that we need to make, and so yeah, I mean, any critical feedback that we can get, I'm open to it, and it
Well,
helps us do our work better.
And I'll be totally honest, that's how I've only worked with you a few times, but I get the impression that you will help us in any way you can within the parameters you're given, and I believe that to be true. So I don't have any issues with, the local folks here, for sure.
Well, again, hopefully that comes across, trying to get to good outcomes, and that's why we're here. I mean, when we were invited, it was, again, something that I really wanted to do because I know there's been decisions that probably, well, have been extremely frustrating. And at least, I can share the parameters that we're working under and some of the rationale in a forum that's a conversation, rather than the back and forth potentially with our technical experts. And that's my role, is to help with that. And then also, find opportunities within our own organization to make connections that maybe aren't happening, that need to happen, to help influence some of those projects in different ways. And again, we have to work within the laws that we have and the parameters that we have, but if there's a decision that's being made, I think everybody should understand why and some of the rationale around that. And I think, maybe there's some opportunities there too, and just good communication. So
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
If you're okay with it, and I open it up to any questions here, you good with that?
Absolutely.
Anybody?
Yeah.
Ron?
is that those the PUD to back out of it. My perception as a community member is that you threw some regulations at them that threw it out of economic viability, and therefore we're in this boat together. So I would be asking you, how do we get to a solution rather than just saying, I'm working on it? Tell us how we get to a solution.
I don't know what the solution is, but I'd tell you, you're exactly right. And that needs to be part of the conversation. And I think that's what we're hearing loud and clear. And that's my role, is coming into this position, is to provide good customer service. And I know it's been one of the 4 priorities of the new governor and down through our director. And so trying to provide upfront assistance where we can to help to get to outcomes, instead of getting permits submitted to us and having to say no. I mean, nobody likes that. And especially if all the work's going into it to try and get to a good project. And I think that's where potentially the breakdown in communication happened. And that is something that I've talked about with our team. And it's really encouraging to hear that the project is still potentially of interest, because I think we can improve on that and hopefully demonstrate through our actions that we can do something a little different this time.
Ron? Button. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. I didn't hear a no in my, as a community and looking at it. I heard it threw it into non-economically viable for us as the customers and using this energy. So now I have an expectation. Let's just give an overview. We have new commissioners, we have a new governor, we have a new president. We should have the attitude that we're going to tackle some of these things and come up with solutions. I'm looking to you to help us as the community to get to that point. So I would be asking, what's the roadblock, or what's keeping that from happening? As a taxpayer and as one of your that pays your bill, how do we get there? And then to say, what are the hurdles, or what are the things that are keeping it, and communicate to not only the commissioners and your governor and everyone else, but to us who ultimately pay the bills. Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah.
I thought I would add a little perspective of, so my understanding is that the thing that really threw a wrench in finishing that project was the requirement for best available control technology to manage the pollution that came out of the actual conversion of methane to energy.
And that's getting to quote real science, right?
Yeah.
That's somebody's real science.
So there were some technical differences between the PUD and ecology staff. Ecology felt like they were following the EPA's guidance. There was some economic analysis that was done. The PUD felt like it was too much. And I think that really was like the block where we didn't feel like we had a lot of flexibility. So I think moving this forward is getting back at the table and seeing if we
Yeah.
can find some money to resolve that. Because really, I think it comes down to dollars and cents, what's holding things up. There was almost 5 million that came from the legislature to get that project going. It was a win-win. Like, we have to figure out and as much as it's within our power to push that along, that's what we'll do. But that's probably really all we can promise at this point, is that we'll try to get the conversation going again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. Yep.
Okay, so therefore, to get the conversation going in any, whether I'm working for my company downtown or whatever, somebody has to be the stimulator of that. So do I look to our commissioners to try to get that talk going? Or do I go to the PUD to get that talk going? Or do I look to you to get energized and get that talk going?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Commissioner Dahl volunteered to get the conversation going. He has my cell phone number. So I anticipate it's going to be all of that. I don't think it needs to be a formal response. I think it's as simple as this conversation and Commissioner Dahl's acknowledgement that this is a priority to get back at the table for all of us. So I can walk away from this meeting. I can send an email to Commissioner Dahl or vice versa, and we can get back into the conversation.
Right. It's
Yeah.
just that we do the wink at knowing who is walking out of this room, knowing who's got the monkey on their back for getting something going.
Yeah,
Well, you
well,
see me most every Tuesday. You can ask me.
I know, and I'll follow up on that.
but so you have the right person in the room.
Right, okay, very good. And then I have a whole bunch on my list, but I'll just take the second one and give others. Silt in the river basin. Is that, you're right on. We all know that it was all stacked up along the side, and eventually through flooding or regular flow, it all ends up back in the river unless we manage it well. So your comment on silt management struck my ears, because every one of the surcharges I've seen on the buildings around here is being done with silt, a very good quality material for surcharging the buildings and compressing our mess of soil that we have underneath everything here. So that's available. But we as the community, I've not seen anything in a bulletin or in a message. Just in setting bricks on my patio, that silt makes great padding underneath for going and doing those things. So a pickup load or a wheelbarrow at a time adds up like the pebbles on a beach of the ocean. So we need some communication that says, what is the availability above and beyond just the professionals and the contractors that are in the business? Borrow pile or something. And you mentioned permitting. Do we have to have a permit to get a few buckets of silt along the beach or out of a borrow pile?
That's a good question. I'd have to dig into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I know there's companies like J.E. McCamus is one that's doing stuff with it. There's a firm in Vancouver that does some selling of dredge material. So there's folks out there that are doing
We
it.
sell some to Store All.
Yeah, stored all at Anchor Point. Yep.
Well, it should be available to the public in a borrow pile, just filling sandbags for dike or for flooding and things like that. Holy smokes. It doesn't seem like a big issue of just making something available
Yeah.
for the public.
We could work with the county on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Ron, maybe remind me of that, because there may be something we could set up through Public Works where there was an area where public could access.
Right, okay. I'll turn it over to someone else and come back and visit later.
So I'll just add quickly that Wahkiakum County at Vista Park, I think it is, they sell sediment. They have some kind of permit from the DNR. So I can get you information about that also if it's.
Mhm. And I'll just note, Commissioner Dahl, if it's okay with you, I don't need an email from you. I'll follow up and get conversation going
Okay,
back on that project. Is that
yeah,
good?
yeah,
Okay.
and I'd be happy to participate, or one of my seatmates certainly would.
Sounds good.
Hey, so I know a great thing to use for the silt that just came to my mind, and it's the perfect base for the golf course. And I'll use the example of our local golf course, Three Rivers Golf Course, all built on them dredge sands, and that's a nice dry course. Your ball rolls a long way there. You know what I mean? You can add 50 yards to your drive just by going over there to play.
I need it.
And gee, just imagine all the golf courses that you could create with this silt.
So need to find the golf course builders and offer them.
Yeah,
Yeah, there-
exactly. You know, all those big golfer guys, they all design courses all the time. And I mean, if you've golfed around the Northwest at all, they're soggy. You know what I mean? As the courses are muddy and wet, and you can't drive your cart to your ball, you know. And when you're old, it's drive out to the ball is nice. So, and like I say, we had a perfect example. That's all on dredge spoils over there, the Three Rivers Golf Course. And it's, if you haven't golfed there, I suggest you do, because it's the best one around.
Thank you.
Silver Lake, did you have a couple questions?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, is it on? Okay. My name's Jeff Curry, and I'm the chair of the Silver Lake Water Advisory Council. And we've been collecting lots and lots of data, and we we need some assistance on next steps, because I read through the results of the plan that was completed by Ecology, a different group of people. We have it's a volunteer organization, so we're in it for a while, and then, get disinterested, get frustrated, let's put it that way. But we'd like to see some of the findings that were in that plan put into some action. And so we've got a number of people who really like to participate in applying the action. We've also been involved with some of the lake management associations. There's a Washington, WAPA, and OLA. They had a conference in Portland, and they had a number of projects that they talked about around Washington and Oregon, addressing many of the problems with Vancouver Lake, and they could apply to Silver Lake as well. I guess from a technical side, we're looking for maybe technical assistance on how we might be able to work together on formulating some of these plans to go to the next steps. That'd be great. I know a few of my members have already contacted the Department of Ecology.
Yeah.
We probably need to get a follow-up discussion and see what we can do to move forward.
I can give you one of my cards if you want
That'd be
to send me your
perfect.
contact
I
info.
appreciate that. Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
That's basically all I had to talk about. Thank you.
Anybody else? This is a great opportunity to have them here. I-
Nobody else, I'll go along some more. Legal pad. Crying out loud.
Just make sure the mic's on. Thank you.
It's on, it's in
Okay.
green now.
Okay.
Okay, water management and wells. So, water and wells are becoming very, very important to all of us, et cetera. So let's just say, how are you managing the water and the wells for the private enterprises, et cetera, or do you have that in? So my understanding is that to build a residence and drill a well, you don't need a water right if you're using 5,000 gallons a day or less, or there's a limit on that. So for us in looking and continued building and people wanting to build out in the areas, how are the wells managed? Or do we have to worry about manage?
Well, I think you're right. There's some exemptions from water rights, but there's still water resource oversight and management responsibilities. So I don't know those off the top of my head. Mike Gallagher is our section manager for water resources in the Southwest region. And if there's specifics, he would be the person.
Is that
He's been
okay?
in our agency for, I hate to say it, but the year I was born, he's been, so for 40 years, he's been in our agency. We are very lucky to have him in the Southwest, and he has the whole history of water rights. He is the one making the decisions on the oversight in the Southwest, so he would be the perfect person to contact around that. And I can connect you with him if you have questions around specific areas or amount of wells being drilled for residential purposes.
And would he be the one knowledgeable of water rights also for people or for communities trying to gain water
Yep.
rights?
Yep,
Okay. Mike Gallagher,
correct. Yep.
okay. Second subject, smelt. We've heard a lot about smelt lately. In fact, the California governor has used it for a reason for burning down Los Angeles. So we have smelt in our river, and I understand that we can't dredge because the smelt are one of the critical elements there that we're protecting. So what's keeping us from being able to plan on or dredging that river as it continues to fill?
Where did you hear? I know that smelt do like sediment more than salmon or, so I can imagine why you heard that. Did you hear it from an agency or?
No, I'm just talking about the community hearing out, kind of walking around. So it has to do with truth and non-truth and trying to figure out what are the answers and truth in a lot of these instances. We float around and you hear all kinds of things. And between the agencies and everything else, we can't tell truth from non-truth. So we come to you to find out the truth.
So I will say, if the Army Corps has the funding, it's within their mission. When their mind is set on dredging, they will dredge, and their requirements related to salmon are I don't want to say less than other agencies, but their focus is the navigational channel. And everything else, smelt, salmon is a second priority. So that makes me think that that's definitely not accurate, that smelt would stop it.
Okay.
You just have to get the Army Corps involved. If it's anybody else doing it, there's going to be a permitting process. WDFW would have to agree. They have their own permitting process. But I think where there's a will, there's a way with dredging. Just kind of depends on where and who's doing it.
Okay.
One of the things I've asked, our commissioners have asked our federal lobbyists to work on is when the mountain happened, Army Corps was given a charge on that. It was really, and they have a name for it, and I can't remember the name for it, but Congress said, you will do this. And it revolved around flooding and the diking. And so that's what they managed to. You almost have to open that up to include dredging or silt accumulation or something to get them into that arena is what I'm being told, or at least when I sat down with them in Washington DC last year, that's pretty much what I was told, because that's not their charge. Their charge is to protect in flooding and in the levees.
Yeah.
Well, they are, like, if our river was considered a maritime highway, if we had stuff up there, they dredge that in a heartbeat and keep it open, just like they do the Columbia. But we're not. I realize at one point in time, there used to be, they'd come up in the older days, it was, there was some business and stuff, but not anymore. So the way he explained it back to me, you're not a maritime highway. And so they're charged to dredge it whenever they need to, isn't there. That's why I said, until that glob works it down to the Columbia, nothing happens to it.
Yeah.
And then they'll take it out.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny when they dredge down here, got this from the port is, they'll load that on a barge and then just take it a little further downriver where and then they dump the barge in the river.
Well, and Sean is right. I was back in Cleveland, and if you're in Cleveland, they have like a wall where it kind of protects them from the lakes and all the weather that comes from the lakes. It has this wall there, and so they keep this area where boats and stuff can navigate. And there's a full-time, I saw it right there, Army Corps of Engineers dredge. If I could have shipped it back, I would have. But they work that all the time to keep that there. That's just part of their charge for that, see?
And I will add the Army Corps plays a role in public safety and flood control as well. And they take that seriously. That's why they're so involved still up in the Toutle with the sediment retention structure. They're not really talking about dredging. It's expensive. I mean, that's part of it. I mean, they've delayed the raising of the crest at the SRS because of funding issues. That's going to help prevent, stop some sediment from coming down, at least until it fills up again.
Until it fills up, yeah.
Yeah, so.
I'm just seeing golf courses around the world. Not saying how it's at.
I tried to get Florida to take some of our sand, and they wanted some special green sand from somewhere.
Yeah, I think though, Commissioner Dahl, I think your approach is right. I think getting something into WRDA, the Water Resource Development Act, is what authorizes the Corps and funds the Corps to do their work. And you look through WRDA, there's all sorts of special projects in there.
Yeah.
And so I think it comes down to the local, priority on it. And
Yeah.
that's where, your role
I think
can be
it only
effective.
opens every couple of years, and I think it's not
Yep.
open again until 2026, but that's one of our goals, is to work with our legislature and see if we can start conversation there a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know they start work on the next one as soon as the last one's passed. It's a long process to get that in place and get the budget associated with it and all that kind of stuff. So,
When you look at what they were given to do, what they were instructed to do, I really can't fault what they've done. They've done what they said they were gonna do. We just need to give them a little more authority or a little more urge to do some of the other.
yeah.
So I'll switch subjects then. Salmon, you talked about salmon recovery. So maybe in today's environment and where we're at, new administration, everything, the Columbia River and the Snake River dams are certainly in a whole bunch of people's bailiwick of commingled expertise and responsibilities. So what kind of put in perspective then what we are on salmon recovery at this end and how it's the river or where this is all going? Meaning is that we knew our Governor Inslee and Biden were working hard to take out the dams on the Snake River. So now we have new people in the mix. How does that size up for us sitting down here and the people on the Columbia River?
I would just say that we're 2 weeks into the new administration, so I'm not sure.
Okay. But it should be, again, based upon some metrics and we've been studying the Columbia River for ages and ages. We've been doing a lot of things. And those of us simple people know that we have one whale of a lot of predators out there taking care of one whale of a lot of salmon. So the dams may be a part of the issue, but we certainly don't have any handle on what is really doing good or bad against the salmon, at least from my perspective and my reading. So it says, you're in the business. Do you have any better insight?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not in that space. I'm not an expert in that.
You can go to the Lower Columbia Fish Recovery Board, their website. They have a lot of publications, reports on there. They take the 4-H approach to salmon recovery. So they look at habitat, which really is what their emphasis is on. A lot of the challenge is, the environment's changing, right, over time. Then hatcheries, hydropower, the dams, harvest and they look at really the big picture and the role that it plays. Predators are part of what they're considering as well. Recognizing that that has an impact as well. It's so complex. That's what makes it tough, right? With salmon recovery. We only have so much money. We only have so much understanding of a complex system. We're trying to balance human interests and the interests of the environment and the fish, and it makes it hard. So it's
We
correct.
had Robert Sudar in, because I think he sits on that board. He's been in salmon forever, and I found it quite interesting because we think of, well, when I think of the salmon, I'm thinking like the Columbia and stuff, but really the territory for salmon and stuff encompasses Oregon, Idaho. It goes into Wyoming, the tributaries and stuff that all feeds into the salmon population in our area. And I didn't realize we have, I think he said like 40% of our salmon migrate to Alaska every year, are fished out up there. I said we should charge them per fish.
they catch a lot of our fish.
Yeah.
Our fish.
Yeah, they do. So
Yeah.
it's we think of it in a more local sense, but they think of it in this great big watershed type thing. It's different. It's kind of interesting, really.
Shauna, oh, go ahead.
No, go.
To what degree does the Department of Ecology get involved in fish recovery and making those types of decisions or putting input in when it comes to making those decisions?
I think that's a majority of authority underneath WDFW, but we play a large role in the restoration space. So what I would say is, like, going back to the lower Toutle, some of the areas that we were looking at around erosion, some of the issues that were coming up around temperature in the water, and the lack of ability because that silt is the way it is, there's no ability for vegetation to reestablish. And so that then creates higher temperatures because there's no shade on the rivers, and the sediment itself, I think, has influences over the salmon recovery as well. So that's where you find these nexus, and that's where the grant programs, at least at our agency, come into play. Even one that was discussed was a water quality grant program for habitat restoration that would potentially get at reestablishing some sort of bank or shoreline with vegetation that could stabilize the bank, as well as provide habitat benefits. And so, but the question around all this silt is how do you do this in a silt that's so fine, that's suffocating some of those spaces from vegetation. So I get that's not really a clear answer, but I'd say that the fish recovery position, and Sean is going to be way more knowledgeable than this, would be more in fish and wildlife, but we have a strong role in the restoration space, trying to get at some of those areas that can be restored for salmon habitat.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
I'm sorry.
please.
Yep.
Have you had WDFW come to any of these?
I haven't. I was just thinking about that because I was thinking about the gentleman that's doing a lot of work with what you're talking about up out of the Toutle, and some of the things they've found out. I think it would be good public information. That's a good thought.
I was gonna just add to Steve's, so I sit on the Lower Columbia Fish Recovery Board's TAC, their Technical Advisory Committee. And we actually just added a second ecology person, a water quality specialist. So we play a little bit of a role there, but like Bobak was saying, a lot of it's really technical assistance and funding. So we don't play a regulatory role in salmon recovery, but we do have someone who sits on a lot of, we have an ecology rep on different committees around the state that deal with salmon recovery. But yeah, through water quality grants and our stream flow restoration grants, like there's a lot going on in the South Fork Toutle. The Fish Enhancement Group has funding from ecology for some projects up there. So yeah, basically funding and technical assistance.
So maybe you can give us a little bit of an overview. There are so many fingers in this Columbia River pie. Again, I was raised in Eastern Washington. We know about the way up in Canada, the negotiations that go on for the water flow, for the power, Banks Lake in Central Washington. They take it down every September 10 feet for fish flow, and none of us can figure it out. With Lake Roosevelt, 155 miles long there, that makes non-identifiable depth change in the big, long reservoir, but they want to impact, we have a simple person's perspective. They want to mess with us by taking Banks Lake fit down 10 or 15 feet every fall just to show that they're doing something, which you can't see what the significance of it is in the big picture. So again, some of us kind of are wondering who has the big picture. So maybe you can give us some pieces of the big picture.
Yeah, no, I think we definitely have folks who are working on that bigger picture scale of the Columbia River. And I think we can organize for them to be there to answer questions at another meeting as
Okay.
well. So I'm guessing that they would be happy to do that. We'd find the right folks to kind of get at some of the things we've already heard. They'd probably join virtually, would be my guess, but we could certainly make that happen
Okay.
if that's of interest.
Okay. So I took some bushes. I'll let somebody else come back up.
Yeah.
Well,
Question before I ask the question, do you have a authority over a septic system?
That's usually local.
Yeah, it's usually local health. Local health usually.
County health.
Mhm.
Getting old, I apologize. My name's Joe Ford, and I'm from a little town called Riderwood. And I just acquired some property up there. And it had, what I found out when going through our county building and planning department, there was no records of any septic system, as an example, for 50 years. So I started from scratch. In fact, we had to go through the discovery, and this is all within the last couple of months. But as the commissioner knows, I'm also involved with our Silver Lake Watershed Advisory Council, and I have a hot button out there. And I think it's a state law that says every 3 years, the sewer system or the septic systems are supposed to be inspected. But what happens to the data? I've talked to environmental health. They had no records. I went to, like I say, building and planning, no records. And there's been a structure on the property I acquired like for at least 50 years. Same thing is true along Silver Lake. So who has the enforcement responsibility? That's the key question I have for you. Because if the law says every 3 years, where is this information supposed to be reported? I think it's supposed to go to environmental health, but I don't know. But they tell me they don't have the authority, at least not enforcement authority, to enter onto private property to do a check, as an example, to see if they have a excess or their septic system isn't working or their drainage field isn't working. So I guess I'm asking is, you're at the state level, we have our county level, but I would assume that you have a higher authority over septic system management. You don't?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a higher authority. I think it's we work in partnership with local governments. It's a delegated authority. I mean, we're a home rule state. A lot of authority is actually managed at the local level. So our agency does play a role in a lot of spaces, but let's just say, for example, the Shoreline Management Act, local jurisdictions are in the lead. We review those plans eventually and we provide technical assistance, but it's the local government that's responsible for developing those plans. So that's the way our state has been established. So I think the local authority is the authority, but we can double check on that. The only other nexus that I would think of is maybe the health department that might have some intersection there, but
Somebody's got to have the authority.
Yeah, I don't know where
well,
the data goes.
I'm sure it's at the local authority, what you run into on some of those type of things, because we don't have the budget or the manpower to
Yeah.
send somebody around to check everybody every 3 years. So what happens is you check upon a complaint or a problem.
Right.
And then we send people out and say, is that true or is it not true? I mean, yeah, we don't have the budget nor the people that we're going to go around and knock on everybody's door every 3 years and make sure they're done. But we react, and we're not different than most other counties or even cities. We react to when there's somebody tells us there's a problem, then we go out and say, okay, it is a problem. We need to fix this, or how you fix it.
But it's so important for a matter of public health. I mean, it's not.
You know, if your septic is wrong, It's pretty quick when you know.
If you get a complaint from a neighbor, my understanding is they have the authority to investigate further.
Yep.
But I'm saying as a general rule, with all the new building permits that are being issued, who's controlling whether or not there's an impact or whether or not this is causing, in our case, Silver Lake. Now, Jeff and I, we disagree to a certain amount, but my feeling is, looking at all the different studies that have been done over the last 40 years, it kind of indicates that this has been a concern all along. That maybe since Silver Lake is at the bottom of a bowl, like it being at the bottom of a bowl, everything, gravity works, everything is flowing downhill. So this could be one of the main causes of the excess organic matter. that
Is
we're
failing
seeing.
septic systems.
Yeah, could
Yeah.
be.
And it's scary for people because they're very expensive to repair or replace. So people ignore them, I think.
Well, I think Vancouver Lake System, they had a program there. It was a poop program or something through the
Smart.
Department of Ecology, which was really clever. And but it also encouraged people to come forward and gave them a method and a reason to come forward. If they had an issue, they could receive some financial help.
Yeah, they have
as an example.
incentives to help, to assist
This-
people.
It's a good program, but people are very fearful because of the horrendous expense involved. But I'm concerned about, I guess from Silver Lake Watershed Advisory Council as a member, I'm concerned about the potential because a lot of these nice residences we currently have out there originated from a campground or a camp facility. Now they've migrated, we have all the modern conveniences, but I'm worried about the impact to the lake because that is all potentially contributing to organic introduction. So anyway, and I've learned in the process about this, seems like something's missing between having a state law that says that within every 3 years, what happens to the data? I can't find anybody that seems to know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, from a homeowner who owns a septic or did, every house that I bought that has a septic or one, there is a deed of transfer associated with that had to be recorded. And so there's data, but that was in Thurston County. So, every counties might be different, but it sounds like there's all the same. And so the fact that data doesn't exist, yeah, I'm not quite sure.
Well, I've lived down there for 19 years and primarily in Riderwood. And we're blessed because we have a municipal water system and sewer system. But so this current acquisition was a surprise when I had to, go to the different agencies and find out about a septic system as an example and find out nothing existed. There was no information. Anyway, just brought it to your attention. I'd like to find out more about it, if I may. So thank you.
Sure.
Okay. They've been gracious and gave us over an hour of their time, so unless there's any, I think we'll just appreciate the time you gave us. We look forward to having you back, and I look forward to working with you on some of the things we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward.
I'll say it again, I think we got good representation in our area. I'm very, very happy to have these Bobak and kind of with us. And I think we'll work real hard to be a team and make things as best we can. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner.
Take 5 minutes and then we'll proceed with the other.
I don't know. What's the next meeting?
We just have executive session with the sheriff. It won't be anything public.
All right. Yes, behind closed doors. Yeah. So much for trying to.
So much for they have to go back. I just go back.
Little detail, 6 years. You guys. Yeah.
It's like, whatever you want to call it.
Talk to you soon. Yeah, I think we're a little. I recall when I'll get that. So I did not think that. You want to be on the general mail again? And so I go to the staff. We talked the other day about, but I haven't talked to her saying about it yet. We're not about it. I don't know.
This is interesting on the septic systems, is that when I have sold some property, septic system, part of doing that, the cover guy has to come out, pump it on out and check it out and report it, and they draw a sketch of what it is.
Resell.
And that event scares the hell out of me. I mean, now you're looking at a 40 or 50,000. Yeah, I was going to tell you. It doesn't make sense. Maybe simple drainage systems that may get water they jump all over the pool.
Let's wait till back. We'll see you soon.
I look at these days when it is ruffles.
That sounds good. Take a seat. Good, take a seat. Here's the moment, so front row.
We have that resolution available. I saw that. Been with the county for a while, I think, and I don't know if it was like like 4 or 5 I'm surprised you're. Or something just huge. Now somehow before the cougar got into our league, this is. Been a year now. So you're not really talking about like this. Figuring out. It's just my role and the role is different.
Okay, we're back, and I was reminding Kathy has a short thing for us.
Yes, I'm Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director, and I'm here to hopefully start the process for 2025 so that we can start taking applications for rural development funds. These are our rural public facilities development funds. And I'm here to tell you that last year we expended $5.8 million in these funds. We brought in a little over $3.2 million. And we had a beginning fund balance, so that's what allowed us to spend more than we brought in. But for 2025, I'm anticipating we'll bring in about $3 million. I brought my estimate down just a little bit. And we have a beginning fund balance of $1.6 million, making total available for disbursement 4.7 for the year of 2025. I would recommend that we don't award more than $3.2 million so that we leave enough in a fund balance for unanticipated projects or in case my revenue estimate is wrong.
Okay.
And if you, in past years, they have had some cases where they awarded payments over 2 years. And if we did a 2-year window, I'd recommend we don't do more than $5.2 million.
Okay.
For 25 and 26.
We get these, I don't know if, this almost works like the public facilities district. It's not a additional tax, it's a refund of
It's a
state
right.
tax because we're considered a rural area.
Right, we get a credit from part of the state sales tax that's collected.
Right, and we can use those funds for city, last year, City of Castle Rock, City of Kalama applied, and they're basically for, the purpose mainly is for infrastructure type things to enhance future development. I think one of the projects we approved last year for Kalama was upgrading their, was it their water system?
Their water system, their water plant
So it
upgrades.
could handle future growth, and we did Castle Rock. We think we put in a water line for Castle Rock, and
Yes, water and sewer systems.
yeah. So that's what they're for, and we don't, and she has to put a public notice in that these are available and that we're accepting applications, and then these entities will put these in, and then we review each one. Last year, they all came in and kind of talked about their project.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean we have to fund everyone, but then we make a decision.
Yeah, and we usually like to see that the facility or the public group also puts in some matching funds or provides funding as well. So, yep.
Do we have any projects that carried over from last year that we're anticipating spending those funds on?
We currently do not. According to their applications, we don't have any that were for 2-year projects. What I've seen in the past is if the project was greater than $1 million, that's when they would split the funding over 2 years. So you have the ability when we're looking at these to make those decisions.
And they have done that in the past. It was before my time. I think there was one pretty good sized project.
Yeah,
they did.
Port of Longview had some funds like that. Some of the ports have some of the larger projects, rail projects, things like that.
Yeah, I noticed in the email that you sent us, a lot of our ports and municipalities take advantage of those of those funds.
Yeah. And that's the other thing about this. Most, those that can apply have to be, they have to be a public type entity. And it has to be towards economic development. So,
Yeah, and because it's a rebate on existing tax, it's no, if we don't have it, it doesn't save our taxpayers any
Right.
money. We just getting something back from what we've already paid, so it's kind of nice in that way.
Yeah.
that's a nice program.
So you just need permission for us.
Yeah, I just
to-
need permission so that I can begin the solicitation and put the applications out publicly.
I'm good.
Okay,
I think we're
that's
good
it.
with that. Okay.
And I'll see you back in April when we have the applications in.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. And the last item we have, I know we have an executive session for contract negotiations. And any idea on time, do you think?
Jason Lorraine for legal. I would suggest maybe 5 minutes for the issues of potential litigation that are involved in the current contract negotiation. There are other issues that we can that were brought up by Commissioner Farrell last workshop that potentially could have been addressed in an executive session. They're out there now. But right now, I think the potential litigation issues need to be,
Okay, so it's actually, we're looking at potential litigation and you're thinking 5 minutes?
about
I
5
might
minutes. Yeah.
Give it 10.
Yeah.
Okay. We will adjourn for
Board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 4:08 p.m. The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 8:14 p.m. 4:14 p.m.
Okay, back from executive session. No decisions rendered. I'll turn it back over. Oh, he locked the door on you. We'll get it open. Okay,
Okay, thank you. Again, Jason Lorraine with Legal. We discussed potential litigation issues regarding continuing with negotiations with the Humane Society of Southwest Washington. I hope that commissioners are aware enough of those concerns and are okay with going forward.
believe we are, yeah.
Okay. So the next issue that presented itself is that we need to have I think it's appropriate to have a single point of contact between the county and the Humane Society of Southwest Washington. That way we have a unified voice. I would suggest, given that the sheriff has already engaged in a number of negotiations with the Humane Society of Southwest Washington, that the sheriff continue with those negotiations on behalf of the county.
I'd agree.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Then, in order to assist the sheriff with those continued negotiations, I've provided Ms. Grayson, the clerk of the board, a resolution for this board to adopt, permitting an extension of the already present contract between the county and the Humane Society that was entered into in 2024 last year. It's necessary so that we can have some continuity in services while the sheriff continues with those negotiations. It would permit the sheriff to have at least sign an extension through the month of February. Right now, I've been made aware that Ms. Dennis and the Humane Society are only going to permit or accept something through the 15th of February. I've made clear to her that county government might run a little slower than that. But that resolution needs to be adopted to permit the sheriff to sign again that addendum to the contract.
Okay. You'll have myself and Commissioner Rader. Commissioner Farrell's he'll be out on medical, but
Okay.
you'll have majority.
Yeah.
So the final issue is, I think, for Under Sheriff Handy, who is present here, as well as to confirm what we discussed on Monday, that the terms that the board is okay with is accepting if the county halts use of the jail facilities, that they would like to lock in the 111,000 for a multi-year contract. Is that correct? With potentially moving up to 170,000 and 170,000 being the high end that you would go forward. 3 years, the duration, is that correct?
I think that would be acceptable. Yeah, that would be acceptable.
Okay. And that is with the knowledge that we are assuming the cost for any citizen drop-offs.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Are there any other clarifying issues that we need to have at this time?
I think we're good, other than, I think the clerk's right. We probably need a formal motion to adopt this resolution.
Okay.
So you would have to make the,
Move to adopt the resolution for the Southwest Washington Humane Society and the Sheriff's Department.
okay, we'd have a motion to adopt the resolution. I doubt we have anybody left on here. I don't see any. So we'll just call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that formally takes care of us.
Okay, I do need to sign that document for form. I think at this point, I have enough information to where I can give the sheriff marching orders.
Okay.
Thank you,
perfect.
sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Without anything else, it's been a good day. We will adjourn. We do?
With regards to the broadband office, the Washington State broadband office, and Comcast and Xfinity wanting to petition for a grant. I read through it, and I think that it'll be beneficial for our citizens if they could get that and expand and offer that broadband and internet connectivity to them. So I move to, do I need to make a motion for that? No? Okay. I'm in favor of it. I'm
Okay.
good with signing it.
I'm good with that also. We can
Okay.
do that. Are we done?
She keeps us on the straight and narrow. That's good.
Thanks for the day. And I enjoyed the participation. I enjoyed having them up. So it was a good day. We will adjourn.